so the next slide is the current situation. And these various points I wanted to talk about in regards to young adults, how young adults want to be involved, and how congregations want young adults to be involved. And so we'll start with leadership, obviously. Young adults want to show up for leadership positions when things are about to happen. Young adults don't like to sit around for months on end just talking about the same topic over and over and over again. We're very like, let's talk about it, let's discuss it, let's do it. But not, let's talk about it 6 months later, oh, by the way. Young adults are a very active group. We have all of this energy, we have all of this, we may not always have the time, but we have all of this energy and we want to do something. And so that's kind of our relationship with leadership in regards to the congregation. We want to be doing things. And so we can often get bogged down by having to talk to the finance committee to make sure we can do something, the social justice committee to make sure that they're not doing the same thing. We can kind of get bogged down in having to talk to each and every individual committee because it takes a lot of time. And so congregations, because baby boomers are in power, they want to make sure that we're inclusive of everyone, that we make sure we're not stepping on other people's toes, to make sure that we are following protocol according to the church. And so there's a lot of red tape that goes along with how young adults want to do leadership and how congregations want to do leadership. And so the next step is spirituality. Young adults leading worship. And I talked about this earlier. Young adults needing new forms of worship, needing new times to do worship, and needing more spiritual aspects from worship. And so we've heard a little bit about how young adults are included in taking responsibility and including and making their own worship for the congregation. That's a great first step. That makes it so that young adult voices are heard. Young adults can have some say in how the worship gets planned out. It also makes it so that young adults take into account the needs of baby boomers. How do we bridge our needs for spirituality with what the needs are of the baby boomers? And how can we make it so that everyone takes something away from this worship service? I recently, this past August, did a worship service with my congregation, and we called it Squircle worship, because the young adults that I work with were familiar with a circle-like format, which is a different format in regards to sitting. And so everybody sits in a circle, as opposed to in a pew-like format with somebody at the front. And so we wanted to bring about aspects from circle worship and aspects from square worship, where there's a minister, a sermon, offertory, and all of these other steps that a lot of baby boomers and a lot of older folks are comfortable with and familiar with. And so we wanted to bring our piece to the table, but acknowledge that they had a place within it as well. And so spirituality in regards to young adults needs to be changed a little bit, I think. And I think young adults are not the only ones who are craving a difference in worship styles. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of people who want to I especially think with the change in the economic playing field, that a lot of older people are having to take jobs that don't allow for them to be available on Sunday, or that work them to the bone until Saturday, and then all they want to do is rest on Sunday, as opposed to go to a church and be on a committee and sit on a meeting. And so providing worship at different times or in a different media format might help provide a spiritual need for young adults and other members of our community.
I'm just wondering, there's a little bit of myth around this, but has anybody been having the conversations in their congregation about music about the need for different kinds of music.
Forever.
Forever. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of myth around that. Everybody says, oh, the young people want to have, faster, more contemporary music. And, the truth of the matter is that the baby boomers are the rock and roll generation. We want different music as well, some of the baby boomers.
Full disclosure, I'm a music teacher, so this may be,
Right.
so I kind of prefer more, I would rather hear Bach or Handel than I would.
And that's like it from a lot of young adults.
Yeah.
It's not, everybody's making assumptions. That's why I'm saying there's this myth about who wants what music.
Well, and there's a factor of when you find your music that's like rock and roll or whatever elsewhere, that's not that hard to find, but experiencing different types of music that might be outside of their personal interest isn't hard to find necessarily, and having that at a conversation makes sense.
Yes, ma'am.
You've been talking about kind of something for everything, something for everybody worship.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think that's a good ideal, but I think a lot of Unitarians, and I say Unitarians as opposed to Unitarian Universalists, come to the table with the idea that, first of all, we don't use that word worship, and also that there's a whole bunch of other poison words that if you use them, I won't hear anything else you say. So there's this background level of hospitality was a word you used before, openness, acceptance, and generosity that we think we're good at, but we're not so good at. And that conversation has to happen
Yes, ma'am.
so that we can hear each other.
I think we're getting, I'm sorry, I don't want to dominate the discussion or anything, but I think you're really onto something. I think, and I don't know if this is me coming from, I wasn't a homegrown UU. I come from another faith source that I found UU in, but I think that there's a lot of young adults who may self-identify as theists, which can often be, there's pushback on that.
You bet.
And I'm not saying that we want to be inclusive of all, and we need to understand that some young adults may be coming into what we might consider a more traditional thought on certain things, and there's definitely a pushback when something, we don't say the G word here.
So if we want to be something more than a haven,
Right.
then we have to get past that. And it comes out in a lot of different ways. And it's not strictly generational, but there are some generational.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Do you sense that there is a generational difference?
To some
or
extent.
A different reactivity around that language?
I'll agree to some extent, because I think that there's a lot of diversity amongst us too. I certainly don't speak for every young adult.
Right.
But I would say that if I were to say generationally, there may be a disproportionate amount in the young adults who may differ from the opinions of the older generations.
Or even if they aren't theistic, they're more tolerant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real issue.